Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for joining us. Welcome to this press event on London Calling Climate Action. I'm really thrilled to have with us some very special guests, including Fiona Cowan, who's head teacher at Bolsover Infant School in the United Kingdom, Asha Alexandra, principal at the GEMS Kindergarten Starters in Dubai, Melanie Harwood, our chief executive at Educate Global, as well as Stephen Cowan, who's head of Hammersmith and Fulham Borough in London, the United Kingdom. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us.
You've forgotten Jan Parnell, who's going to be joining us online.
Jan Parnell will be joining us online. My apologies. I am really delighted to spend a couple of minutes just introducing the Educate Global project. So Educate Global was set up in April 2019 with a mandate to place a climate change teacher in every school worldwide. Initially, we were set a target of just 80 schools. We thought that was quite a challenge to begin with, but actually, through the sheer dedication of our team, we were really impressed to see over 1,000 schools within the first week of launching. Now here we are 6 months later with more than 225,000 UN Educate Global accredited climate change teachers worldwide across more than 40 countries, as you can see up on our map. So climate change education is of paramount importance. I think to actually make a difference, there has to be a change in the way we behave, act, and think sustainably. The Educate Global project focuses on 4 phases. The first phase, which we're going to be focusing especially on today's panel, is all around teaching and education. So actually upskilling our teachers to be climate literate, to understand what climate change and sustainability is, and then how to educate that to our young children and future generations. Educate Global is also able to support educators in schools in the years to come in actually achieving that and ensuring that governments and schools around the world are rolling out climate change education throughout all of their lessons. Our third phase revolves around initiatives, ensuring that schools can actively drive a carbon footprint reduction and encourage sustainable behaviour as a second mindset. And then in our final phase, we measure and report all of that back. So that is very brief, the Educate Global project. I am going to be quiet now and hand over to Jan Parnell, who is joining us on Skype. Jan Parnell is the Director of Education at Hammersmith and Fulham Borough in London.
Hello, I'm Jan Parnell, Director of Education in Hammersmith and Fulham. And I'd just like to say that after our trip to Dubai with Melanie and Harwood Education, we were so inspired. I went with 2 head teachers. We saw the wonderful work that GEMS Kindergarten School with Asha is doing, and we've come back and we declared that we are going to universally adopt the United Nations Education Scheme. So our schools have already said they want to join in. We have already launched it locally, and we are having unprecedented interest, not only from our teachers, but also from our young people. This is really important because our young people want to be really active in this space, and they want the United Nations Climate Change Education Programme to help give that shape. Ours is going to be rooted in activism because our children are already joining in Plant a Legacy, and they've planted trees, even though it's a winter here, and they have already started to recycle waste. When we went to Dubai, we were really inspired about the universal aspect of Asha and her school. All of the teachers were on board. So we don't just want to have 1 hour a week devoted to climate change, we want to integrate it into our curriculum. And this is where it can help with literacy, numeracy, everything. Absolutely superb. So this is what we're doing. So I would like to congratulate the United Nations Climate Change Education Programme for Mel's sort of innovative way in which she does it, and she inspires us all to do that. Hammersmith and Fulham Council, as you know, has declared a climate emergency. We have a special unit dedicated to this, and we're going to be pioneers in developing curriculum materials and activities that we will put online and share with the world. We're happy to give this away and receive gifts from other people in terms of inspiring our young people. The final thing I'd really like to say is this scheme also really helps families and communities. When we went to Dubai, we saw many parents actively engaged in this education because, as we know, we are all teachers and we can all spread this message and get really active and engaged. The other thing I'd like to say is that we were working with local charities who've been working on eco projects locally for many years, and they are galvanised as well that we have a really brilliant scheme that we can roll across. So our governing bodies are also interested in our schools, and they've also endorsed the programme. So we're really looking forward to these beginnings where we've got a few schools who fully adopted it. Many parents and teachers are going to do the units over Christmas, and then we'll have a big launch and rollout in the new year. This is just the start.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jan. I'll hand you back to Tim.
Thank you, Jen. That was fantastic. So, London Calling is the topic of our session today. And as you heard Jan Parnell mentioned, it all began with a trip to Dubai. So I would like to hand over to Asha Alexandra, who is one of the world's leading climate change teachers, to explain how that partnership came about.
Hi, I'm Asha Alexander. I work at the GEMS Kindergarten Starters in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. Climate change, I think, is a multidimensional problem, and it requires a collective solution. So when we heard that the Sovereign Borough Council of Hammersmith and Fulham were interested in what we were doing, we were more than happy to host them, to exchange ideas and local climate initiatives, like what Jan had just mentioned, the Plant a Legacy, which was our commitment to plant 15,000 trees each year in the United Arab Emirates. We thought it would take a year, but in less than 2 months, with the arrival of Hammersmith and Fulham, who accompanied us on the final leg of the campaign, we had completed planting 15,000 trees. That initiative didn't stop there. When Jan returned to UK on November 25th, we engaged in a global extension of this campaign with 25 countries planting in 185 locations. Now, this is the power of collaboration. What we want to do is to boost multi-level climate action. There is a lot left to do, and I know that working with Educate Global and UNITAR, we will be able to embed climate literacy not only in a particular region, but across schools in the world, because it is highly scalable, it's replicated very well in UK as far as we have come to know, and it will have a lasting impact. We have to stop working in silos and build capacities and ambition for climate action.
Thank you. I think it's important to say as well that climate change education is not simply handing out a textbook and saying this is the theory of global warming and this is how it works. At Educate Global, we actively encourage teachers, educators and schools to go into a much greater level of depth. And Asha's school is an outstanding example of this. So I'm going to share a very quick clip of some of the work her pupils are taking at her school and to see just quite how they are learning about the world around them.
The curriculum should steer away from departmentalization and head towards being more holistic with meaningful connections. At KGS, real-world themes like forensic science, climate literacy, and space exploration are the need of the hour and are embedded within the curriculum to provide a highly contextualized setting for multisensory and extensive learning.
I can relate the sea level rise to the recent floods that happened in Kerala and Mumbai last year. And I didn't know climate change was so frightening.
This integrative education practice is not only a hands-on participatory approach, but is also poised to situate languages, mathematics, science, and even liberal arts in a broader cross-disciplinary framework.
Sustainable cities are the need of the hour. With us approaching Expo 2020 and a future where natural resources are depleting, we are hoping that AI and robotics will help us develop a cleaner and long-lasting environment to live in.
That's a really fascinating example of children around the world, particularly in GEMS Kindergarten Starters, learning through a different mindset of doing and actually thinking about how their sustainable choices can affect the world around them. Fiona, you are the head teacher of Bolsover Infant School in the United Kingdom. Please tell us a bit about how you kind of encourage climate change education in your school.
Okay, so we've took a much similar approach to Asha in that we've integrated climate change teaching and climate literacy and embedded it within our curriculum. Ours is an infant school, and so we teach children between the ages of 3 and 7, and we needed to make sure that that fit within the curriculum that we were already delivering. We already had quite strong data in our basic skills. We had good and better teaching in all classrooms, but we'd spent a lot of time working on projects around metacognition and well-being, global citizenship, and science within the curriculum. But by undertaking the training that was offered to us by Educate Global and UNITAR, it allowed us to ensure that we had the basic knowledge to make sure that climate change literacy was embedded within what we were already delivering. We deliver a play-based curriculum within our school. We make sure that it has climate messages wherever it's appropriate, but it doesn't stand alone. It's not a curriculum that we spend an hour a week on climate literacy. It's embedded in everything we do. So it's part of the curriculum we deliver every day. Although we do have one-off events, we had a 6-foot animatronic dinosaur visit, Polo, the climate change bear. We've had science outdoor sessions, but it's about making sure that it's part of the message that children are getting every day. We've seen a huge impact on that since September with our children. The message is going out there to the parents, to the community, and we've seen a definite change in attitude, in ability and in action as a result of educating young children.
Stephen, I guess Hammersmith and Fulham Borough are going to become one of the first boroughs in the world to really ensure that climate change education is adopted by every school. My first question to you is, what do you hope for the children in your borough for the future in the decades to come?
Well, we very much aim to be the greenest council in the United Kingdom and have a variety of different policy approaches to achieving that. But central to it is marshalling and engaging the public in a way that hasn't been done before to rise to those challenges. And when we say the public, at the heart of that is the children who are going to inherit the world, and they are core to our plan of changing the world. So in short, what that means is Educate Global's UN programme will be in every single school in all different aspects of the curriculum, but we will also look to extend what they learn through that programme into our youth clubs and other factors of people's lives. We think climate change is something that affects everybody at all times, and so it is not just another subject that you need to study, it is something central to how we begin to shape the future. And the way we do that, fundamentally, is to make sure that our children have the knowledge and skills to be able to partake in that debate, but also to lead change at a very fundamental level, whether that's in their families, whether it's in their communities, but also whether it's going on to get jobs in the green economy, which we're aiming to create, that begins to tackle some of the huge scientific challenges as we begin to try and protect our planet.
I think you mentioned something really interesting there. Climate change isn't just one subject that needs to be added. Traditionally, climate change has been something that's been taught possibly in science, increasingly more so in citizenship, but it affects everyday life. It affects everyday life in a lot of ways that we don't even understand as we go through our day-to-day motions. Asha, you've been mapping the national curriculum, or the curriculum that you study at kindergarten starters, and seeing how you can integrate climate change in there. How would you go about introducing climate change into subjects we perhaps don't traditionally think of, like mathematics, literature, or perhaps even art?
Our curriculum is mapped looking at the existing objectives and trying to find a commonality and where it is best suited to integrate. So we've looked at mapping the curriculum in moral education, in English, in science, in social studies, and in mathematics. And when this consistent messaging happens in every single classroom, day after day, students understand it's integral to learning. Because curriculum is not just about the academic aspects, it's about the social and the spiritual aspects as well. And students should understand that they have to become responsible citizens. We let the curriculum evolve depending on what is happening around them in the world. And for each region, that might be a little different. But if you do integrate it completely into the curriculum, you will gather better benefits from it rather than teaching it as a separate climate literacy subject.
Absolutely, and I think Fiona as well, especially in the United Kingdom, but a lot of countries worldwide, teachers perhaps feeling overworked or stressed with the amount of work they have on their plate, marking, preparing lessons can be quite overwhelming. When we're coming in and we're saying, okay, climate change education needs to be taught to equip our future generations for the years to come, that can set off some alarm bells. So how have you seen your teachers adapt and respond when introducing climate change as part of the existing curriculum framework is actually done?
I mean, we've heard the message about workload from teachers in England for a long time, but actually, you think about the difference that climate change literacy makes to children and communities. It's not something that can be pushed aside. It can't be put to the side when we need to make a difference to what's happening in the world. My teachers were really easily persuaded that climate change literacy needed to be within the curriculum. But because it wasn't an added subject, it was part of the work that they were doing. It meant that other than looking at their lessons and being able to have a climate change message within them, it didn't bring along lots of additional work. But what they did is they used the curriculum that they already had to engage the children and to empower them, and then use the education that they'd undertaken as part of the Educate Global training to use that to encourage children to think, to use the skills that they'd learned within metacognition, to engage with the subject, to talk about what they can see, what did it make them think about, and how they could ask questions that really took them beyond the simple curriculum.
Stephen, London is one of the biggest metropolises in the world, or to use the correct term, I think even it's classified as a megacity. Jan Parnell said that actually there was a great deal of appetite and excitement for climate change education in Hammersmith and Fulham. How are you seeing that in your day-to-day work?
Well, we think there's a number of lenses of which you can look through this. Looking to the future, which any educationalist always has to do, then one question you would ask is, where are the best possible jobs going to be? And one of the answers is they're going to be in STEM industries. And STEM industries' key challenge will be climate change. And therefore, you can look at it from that perspective and say that by arming our children with the knowledge and skills, we're also preparing them for the future and for their future careers. You can then say, well, if we look at what those challenges might be going forward 20 years, then they are shocking and stark. So again, by educating people to be able to work out how they prepare for that, resist it, and lead and take part in the public debate is very important. There's one final aspect, which is we are keen to raise a team of people who will make the arguments for climate change, because there are still people in too many positions, in too many countries, who are arguing that climate change is not necessarily a threat that needs to be addressed. And I think that's where you require a revolution in the way we deal with our public discourse. Now, we have a public commission led by some of the individuals and residents who are campaigning against the climate emergency. And I don't see that as separate to educating in the schools. We have to join everything up, break down the silos, and get people to work together, and knowledge empowers people to do that better. And the best people to empower are our young people, because not only will they be prepared for their futures, they will also have that discussion in their families and in their communities. And we think it's a very good bit of touch paper to light, but we need to light other bits in order to get this to take off.
My last question, and then I'm going to open it to the floor if there's anything anyone would like to ask the panel, and this is open to everyone, is do you think governments around the world are doing enough? Educate Global has been going little over 6 months and has managed to place a UN-accredited climate change teacher in, well, 275,000 of them in over 40 countries. But it's been done by a team of 4 people working their socks off. Do you feel collectively that there is enough government support helping pushing this through?
There seems to be here, Tim. I mean, we've made some very interesting connections here at COP25. I mean, today alone, we've had meetings with senior ministers from Nigeria, Senegal, Thailand, Mexico. I mean, Mexico, they've even changed their constitution. They are ready to go. I'm not so sure. Some countries are still finding their way, but I think we have to start with those baby steps. What do you think, Asha?
I think we have to begin somewhere, and I think we've made a good beginning. We have to show examples to the world of what works, because people are always questioning about whether this is the solution or one of the solutions. Like I said, it's a multi-level approach, multi-level solutions. Education is one of them. It can't be the only one. And governments must pay attention and ensure there's a layout in education, a budget solely devoted for funding, so that we can introduce climate literacy in all schools all over the world. And I don't mean just private schools like ours, but literally every school across the world, because every child everywhere has the right to learn, because children are the most vulnerable when it comes to climate change. Whatever we might say, we have to equip them with the right kind of learning. And we're ignoring what is right under our noses. Sometimes I feel in these 25 years of COP, if we had begun at the very first to start educating, we would have plenty of adults out there who would be more responsible towards the environment, because it is every individual that contributes to the increased carbon footprint. These things are not known. Even if you go out into the streets and talk to adults, many of them have a nebulous idea of what is climate change, but they really don't think it concerns them. We have to get rid of that perception.
What are you going to do when you take, with Hammersmith and Fulham, come through to UAE for the 2020 Expo? That's going to be interesting.
We'd like to showcase at the 2020 Expo all the work that has been going on in collaboration with the Hammersmith and Fulham Borough, and by the time I'm hoping Mexico, Nigeria, and other countries will also join us at Expo 2020's Sustainability Pavilion to showcase what we have learned in embedding climate literacy. In the 5-6 months that we have begun, we can already see behavioral changes both in the students and their parents and the wider community. We've had our waste management donating compost machines to the school to enable children to understand what is waste segregation and composting. So when communities and parents and others collaborate and not compete to prove which country is the first or which country is going to do it better, I think we will arrive at a solution that's long-lasting.
Thank you so much. We're going to end with one short video, and then we'll be accepting questions from the floor.
Now that I see what is possible when you have an army of Greta Thunbergs, you can achieve anything.
I'm aware that fact is slightly out of date, 55,000. Wow, we've come a long way very quickly. It is now over 225,000 UN-accredited climate change teachers worldwide. So I would be delighted to welcome any questions directed to anyone on the panel.
Any questions? Oh, there's one there.
Please.
Hi, hello, my name's Henry McGee. I'm from the UK. I work with climate change, sustainability in museums. We were just in the high-level event before, where they were, that UNESCO gave out this report on what's it called? Country Progress on Climate Change Education, Training and Public Awareness. And there's a kind of general acceptance, you hear it all over this COP, of the importance of education, but yet education so often becomes, oh, education, that means schools, and that means young people, whereas education and learning are a lifelong process. And if we look at the IPCC, the reports, the summaries for policymakers, education, if it's there at all, is still kind of tagged on right at the end. So do you have any suggestions as to how this work can get mainstreamed and be more in people at the forefront of people's minds?
You can answer that, Fiona. You've already seen a change in your
Yeah, I
area.
mean, we're educating very young children. They're 3 to 7. If we wait for them to save the world, we've got at least 15 years before, we're going to see any of that. It's obviously really important to start with the children really young, because this is going to be the world that these children live in. However, the biggest change we've seen in educating children is they're going home and educating their parents. And we've seen a huge impact on parental information, parental discussions with teachers, with myself. Facebook is alive with things that parents are already doing. I had a parent say to me the other day, we've been home and we've changed all our light bulbs to energy-saving light bulbs because they kept telling us about turning the lights off, and they were engaged and empowered. And we're in a coal mining village in the middle of England. It's a difficult community and they're listening. The problem is they're not the only people. We need to train teachers, we need to get them to the universities, we need the secondary schools to pick this up. And I think as the momentum goes, the children will feed this out, and they will be the pressure that makes government sort of move on making sure that absolutely education needs to be the key. When we've changed things in the past, you have to get people educated, you need to engage them in the subject, and I think there's been a huge change in that over the last year. However, it's not far enough and it needs to go quicker. And, we're talking to governments. We've spoke to many ministers today, lots of different countries, and we're trying to implore with people that we haven't got time to waste. This is not something you can take your time over. We've changed in our school in the last 6 months. I've got a fully trained staff. All of the staff in my school have undertaken the course. I've got parents and governors signed up to the course when we get back in January. I'm delivering the course out to the head teachers in my cluster in February. In March, I'm delivering the training to 20 new teachers, and so it goes on. It's really important that we create these hubs of experience that can then filter out. I know Ash has had exactly the same experience in her school too.
I mean, that's why you have that hub. Once you've got Hammersmith and Fulham, that entire group of those schools, that becomes your central hub for all of London, and it spreads outwards and goes onwards.
I think it's important to say as well, teachers don't just teach children. Children will take what they've learnt home and they'll nag their parents. My family have got an electric car now, which is obviously just one small step, but that's because I had a teacher who was telling me about the environmental sustainability differences. And it took me 2 years, but I wouldn't drop it. And that is one change that happens. So children affect their families and they affect the world around them. But yes, I saw that you had your hand up.
We've got time for one more question.
So just a very quick follow-up then. So do you have any intention to broaden the training out to informal and non-formal institutions?
We would absolutely love to if the funding was there. If the funding was there, we would absolutely do it. So let's have a chat once we finish here.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming and taking part in this session. Please do come and find us if you have any questions afterwards. You can also find out more about Educate Global. Our website is www.educate.global.org. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your conference.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye then. Thank you.